Hi, I'm back. Members of the Church of Jesus, we're going to talk today a little bit about something I would call the, uh, the School of Spirits. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints often speak of the concept of eternal progression. In doing so, they generally focus on what we would call the future. The idea is that we can continue to learn and grow throughout both time and eternity to become more and more like our heavenly parents. Jesus admonished his disciples, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." But eternity is not only about the future. Eternity extends into what we might call the past as well. And so, if learning and growing throughout eternity is a truthful reality, we must acknowledge that we have already been doing it since before the beginning of time as we now measure it. And so, let us delve into the idea of what might be called the School of Spirits, the venue in which we learned what we would need to know in order to move into the current phase of our progression, known as mortality. We are, of course, taught that God is omniscient. He knows everything. Whether that means that he was our primary instructor before we came to earth, we do not know. But let's use a common paradigm for learning in mortality. That of going to school during the day and then going home after school with homework assignments that we do under the supervision of loving parents. Even before attending school, we learn things at home. We learn that our parents love us and that they provide for our needs. Our home being in heaven at that time, there was no evil, no disobedience, no fighting at the dinner table, etc. We were loved perfectly by perfect parents, and they had the ability to communicate that perfect love in a manner that our merely mortal families are seemingly unable to replicate here on earth. One of the things we are to learn here is to love one another as our Heavenly Father loves us. It's hard. Nearly everyone knows what perfect love feels like. I imagine you probably can imagine what it would feel like to be perfectly loved. But no one with a merely mortal body has the capacity to demonstrate it the way that God does. I mean, I can tell my wife that I love her, but it doesn't make her feel it. And when she says it to me, it's nice, but it doesn't change the way, it doesn't make me feel loved just because she says the words. Besides love, there were other things that we had to learn. In order to be prepared for mortality, our spirits had to master lots of things that would be required to sustain life on a planet such as ours. What is the difference between a physical body with a spirit who is alive and one without a spirit that we would call dead? When a person dies, there is no immediate change in mass, weight, physical composition, cell structure, organs, etc. But the brain stops sending electrical impulses through the nervous system to the heart, muscles, and digestive system. The blood stops flowing from the heart to the lungs for oxygenation and back to the heart and from there to the other organs of the body, providing them with oxygen and nutrients to nourish the cells, then on to the liver to remove cellular waste, and then back to the heart again. And when the brain stops, the heart stops, and the breathing stops, and metabolism stops, the body begins to decay. The neurological impulses and biochemical reactions that are characteristic of life are replaced by biochemical reactions that are characteristic of what we call death and decay. That is the scientific description of what happens, or at least my version of the scientific description. And try as they might, practitioners of medical art and science are unable to extend meaningful life indefinitely by the use of ventilators, heart pacemakers, intravenous feeding tubes, you name it. And we're seeing a lot of that these days during the COVID pandemic. Truth be told, the biochemical reactions of death and decay are constant within our bodies. But the spirit organizes the body's effort to maintain life by constantly regenerating cellular functions and capabilities, using food sources and oxygen and water to constantly organize and reorganize the matter that we call our bodies, creating disease-specific antibodies and T cells to fight viruses and bacterial infections, forestalling the onslaught of disease, death, and decay for the period of time that we call life. And when the spirit departs the body, that is when death decays, or death occurs. When and where did your spirit learn to control all of the functions of your physical body? And if your spirit manages to do this for years on end, why is it that it seems to happen without even thinking about it? I mean, these are some of the things that our spirits must have learned prior to our birth. Even when sleeping, we retain the intellectual capacity to maintain a pulse, respiration, nervous system, metabolic and digestive functions that are accomplished entirely without conscious effort. Somewhere in the past, our spirits developed the intelligence to exercise subconscious control over these systems to sustain life. The next time you're tempted to think of someone as being dumb as a rock, think again about how much intelligence it takes just to stay alive. If we all had to rely exclusively upon our conscious mind to stay alive, it is doubtful that any of us would survive past infancy, much less to the age at which we could responsibly reproduce and perpetuate the species. The subconscious mind might just be a better measure of one's intelligence than the conscious one. And yet, it is the conscious mind that we use not to maintain life so much as to live life. The veil of forgetfulness that enshrouds our memory of when and where we learned how to maintain life at the cellular biochemical level appears to be associated with our subconscious mind, and our conscious mind seems to be caught up in the activities of everyday life and the enjoyment of our physical senses. We use our conscious mindful intelligence to interpret the reflections of light off of different objects to identify physical shapes, colors, movement, and even the minute details that enable us to identify and differentiate between other people. We master the ability to eat food, contract and relax our muscles, maintain balance, sit up straight, crawl, walk, run, and dance. As we grow and develop, we learn to interpret and produce sound waves associated with speech and language. We learn to use our hands to create intricate figures, which, when combined together in different patterns, communicate abstract thoughts and ideas. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. In the School of Spirit, we did not yet have bodies or physical senses, but we spent a good portion of eternity past learning about those things. We'll stop now again, and I will come back to what happens when you have a school assembly and everybody gets together to talk.